Hello students, welcome to the channel. In this video, we'll solve the fifth and final passage of the reading section of the October 2020 US SAT. This is a science passage. This passage is adapted from Thomas Schoner and David Spiller, Trophic Cascades on Islands. In the 1970s, one of us visited more than 500 Bahamian islands to survey distribution of vertebrates with special emphasis on lizards and birds. A key objective was to determine the threshold island area on which vertebrate populations could just survive. We were astonished to find lizards, particularly Anolis segre, on some tiny islands, a discovery that multiplied by at least 2 orders of magnitude the list of Bahamian islands surmised or known to have resident populations of vertebrates. We realized we had to check many quite small islands to determine such thresholds, and in the course of that endeavor, we came upon a large number of islands without lizards. This led to a second, even more exciting discovery. Such islands sometimes had extraordinarily high densities of spiders, the omnipresent webbing giving them the appearance of the proverbial grandmother's attic. Okay, so this introduces the passage about the study that the authors conducted in more than 500 Bahamian islands to survey the presence of vertebrates and particularly lizards and birds. And there were two key discoveries that they made. One was that there were lizards that they found on some tiny islands. And in fact, that led to a giant increase in the number of islands that have populations of vertebrates. But the second and the more interesting discovery was that the islands that did not have a large population of lizards had huge populations of spiders, extraordinarily high densities of spiders. In 1981, we had to investigate this phenomenon systematically for the many small islands in the central Bahamas near the relatively large island of Staniel Cay, a major stopover in our earlier survey. Our first study found that spiders were about an order of magnitude denser on no lizard than lizard islands, adjusted for the positive and negative correlation with area and distance from large land masses, respectively. A second observational study in 1982 examined numbers of spider species, finding that no lizard islands had 1.5 to 2 times the number of species as had lizard islands, again adjusted for area and distance and for the maximum height attained by the vegetation on the island, which correlated positively with the number of spider species. The result was quite different from Payne's famous one in the rocky intertidal, in which density increased with increasing predation, and it presaged other such results for terrestrial arthropods in our system and in others also. Okay, so this presents, again, findings that the authors made, and there were two important things to notice. The first study said that spiders, the spider population, were an order of magnitude denser on no lizard than lizard islands. So that was number one. And the second was that the number of spider species on no lizard islands was also greater, right? So it wasn't just the numbers of spiders, but the number of spider species on these no lizard islands that were greater than ones on the lizard islands. And this was quite different from accepted wisdom in the scientific community on this topic. And so this was something that the authors thought was worth investigating. Such comparative data pointed to a strong negative effect of lizards on spiders, but as is true of all comparative studies, the observations did not suffice to eliminate alternative hypotheses about why islands with and without lizards might differ. A more reliable investigation would be experimental, and towards that end, we staked out 9 approximately 83 square meter plots on Staniel Cay in 1985. 3 of the plots were unenclosed and the others had wood-framed fences made of hardware cloth topped with smooth plastic to impede lizard locomotion in and out. 3 of the enclosed plots were randomly chosen to maintain lizards at natural densities, whereas the other 3 had lizards removed. Thus, we had 3 treatments. The 2 types of enclosed plots tested the lizard effect, and the unenclosed plots were a cage control to be compared with the enclosed lizard plots. Okay, so this paragraph sets up the experiment that the authors conducted. What they had observed from the data did indicate that there was a negative correlation between the presence of lizards and spiders, but that could only be established after they had controlled for other factors. So they needed to conduct an experiment. And this describes how they conducted the experiment, how they ensured that the presence of lizards and the absence of lizards could be monitored with enclosed plots as well as unenclosed plots. The 18-month experiment showed that lizard removal enclosures had spider densities 3 times higher than those control enclosures, and the unenclosed, which also had lizard plots. Numbers of spider species were higher without lizards as well in parallel to the comparative studies. Numbers and biomasses of insects caught in the sticky traps were also higher in lizard removal enclosures. Therefore, an increase in spiders did not completely compensate for the absence of lizards. There was some effect of the enclosures. Sticky traps in the enclosed blocks caught about 20% fewer arthropod individuals than those in open plots. So the results were kind of mixed, right? That's what this tells me, that the experiment showed that lizard removal enclosures did have higher spider densities. But interestingly, the insects that were caught in the sticky traps, those were also higher in lizard removal enclosures, which is to say that the predatory effect of spiders did not completely compensate for the absence of lizards. What was the mechanism of the now firmly established lizard effect on spiders? The obvious one is predation. However, a second is competition for food. Spiders consume prey large in relation to their own size, so lizards and spiders might overlap in prey size well beyond their relative body sizes alone. So this kind of summarizes the 2 possibilities that could account for the negative correlation between lizards and spiders. One obviously is predation, the fact that lizards consume spiders, but also the fact that they might compete for food themselves, right? Because spiders consume prey large in relation to their body sizes. So it's possible that part of the results with regard to the sticky enclosures, which had greater insects in the absence of lizards than was expected, was due to the competition for food. Okay, we'll come to the figures later. 42, as used in line 11, check most nearly means. So let's look at that. This one. We realized we had to check many quite small islands to determine such thresholds, which is to say that, to study, to include in the study. So to inspect, right? They could not just leave it at that. They had to inspect smaller islands as well. Counter is used in the sense of countering an argument. So that doesn't make sense in the context of checking an island. Stop doesn't make sense. And it's not about marking an island. It's about inspecting the island for the presence of lizards. So D. The parenthetical statements in lines 25 to 27 and lines 30 to 33 primarily serve to. So 25 to 27. This one, adjusted for the positive and negative correlations, and again adjusted for area and distance and for the maximum height. So this kind of indicates that when they were conducting these observational studies, before they conducted the actual experiment, they did see certain trends which they had ensured were as accurate as possible given the circumstances. So they had adjusted for the possible variables. Concede that the observed correlation between spider and lizard populations was weaker than researchers expected. described additional variables that the researchers took into consideration while investigating causes of spider population variances, dismiss a possible objection to assumptions the researchers made while recording observations about spider populations, offer an explanation for the unusual nature of the spider population data that the researchers obtained. So this is B, right? They indicate this information because they want to talk about additional features like area, etc., that they took into consideration while charting the correlation between lizard and spider populations. This is not a concession that the correlation was weaker than expected. This is simply presenting data that they took into account. This is not a possible objection to the assumption that they were trying to dismiss, because they did come back and create their own experiment to make sure that everything was accounted for. And this is simply data that they included. This doesn't offer an explanation for what they observed. So it's B. It can reasonably be inferred from the passage that the observational studies of the early 1980s were significant in part because they, and this is evidence pair, showed that certain island ecosystems were more diverse than the researchers previously thought, incorporated a new method for studying the effect of land area on species population data, were inconsistent with the findings of an earlier investigation into a similar relationship, and confirmed a positive correlation researchers had long suspected but had not demonstrated. So it's C, right? We know that their data was inconsistent with what Payne had found. This result was quite different from Payne's famous one in the Rocky Intertidal, in which diversity increased with increasing predation, and it presaged other such results. So what they found with regard to the negative correlation between diversity and predation was something that was unexpected because it wasn't what Payne had found. Okay, so the results were significant because they showed that certain island ecosystems were more diverse than the researchers previously thought. But this doesn't talk about the correlation, which is what the difference with Payne's study was about. So it's not A. Incorporated a new method for studying the effect? No, so there's no mention of a new method. So it's not B. Confirmed a positive correlation researchers had long suspected? No, in fact, it did not confirm the positive correlation. It said that there was a negative correlation. Right, and the evidence would be lines 34 to 38, right? Those are the lines which talk about Payne, 34 to 38, option D. Based on the passage, the primary advantage the experimental study had over the observational studies was that it could, and this is also evidence-based, answer a further research question about the effects of human-made structures on spider and lizard interactions, control for factors that might have influenced the results of the researchers' observational studies, isolate lizards and spiders from other species to prevent interactions among them from interfering with results, provide a better understanding of diverse ecosystem compositions among individual islands than the observational study could. So it's B, right? It's categorically stated in the passage that such comparative data pointed to a strong negative effect of lizards on spiders, but as is true of all comparative studies, the observations did not suffice to eliminate alternative hypotheses about why islands with and without lizards might differ, right? So observational studies are not sufficient to control for all factors, which is why you need to create an experiment, which is what the researchers did. So they controlled for factors that might have influenced the results of the observational studies. Okay, so one advantage was that the experimental study answered a further research question. No, it wasn't a new research question. They were still looking to investigate the negative correlation between lizards and spiders. Isolate lizards and spiders from other species to prevent interactions among them? No, that was not the primary purpose. Yes, indeed, they created enclosures and they did isolate lizards and spiders, but the purpose was to control for factors, provide a better understanding of diverse ecosystem compositions among individual islands than the observational study could. Again, yes, they were going to get a better understanding of the ecosystem compositions, but that was not the primary aim. The primary aim was to control for factors, and whatever came flowed from that. So it's not D. Okay, and the evidence would be the lines that we just looked at, line 39 to 43, or maybe even a little more because we are talking about experimental. So 39 to 46, option A, that's where we are explaining the need for experimental data. As used in line 51, maintain most likely means. So let's look at 51. Maintain. Three of the enclosed plots were randomly chosen to maintain lizards at natural densities. So to keep lizards at natural densities, to keep lizards, right, at natural densities, that's a good option. You can't promote lizards at natural tendency. This is not the right usage for promote. So promote is to kind of advertise something, so that's not correct. You're not defending lizards, you're just maintaining their natural densities, and you're not declaring lizards, right? Lizards cannot be declared, so these are all wrong in context. Which of the following findings, if true, would best support the explanation presented in lines 71 to 74? Okay, so let's look at lines 71 to 74. A second is competition for food. Spiders consume prey large in relation to their own size. So lizards and spiders might overlap in prey size well beyond their relative body sizes alone. So I need to support this. The total insect biomass consumed by spiders was reduced in lizard enclosures and unenclosed plots compared with the biomass consumed by spiders in lizard removal enclosures. The survival rate of spiders was significantly higher in lizard removal enclosures than in lizard enclosures and unenclosed plots. Fewer spider webs were found closer to the ground where lizards might have easier access to them in unenclosed plots and lizard enclosures than in lizard removal enclosures. Insects consumed by spiders in unenclosed plots were significantly larger on average than were insects in lizard enclosures and lizard removal enclosures. Okay, so let's start by eliminating. So I can definitely eliminate B and C because B and C are about the effect of the predatory effect of lizards on spiders, right? It's not about the competition between the two for food. So those are out because B talks about survival rate of spiders and C talks about spider webs and where they were found, right? Now let's look at A and D. The total insect biomass consumed by spiders was reduced in lizard enclosures and unenclosed pots compared with biomass consumed by spiders in lizard removal enclosures. So this indicates that there is some competition for food because the one that was in lizard enclosures and unenclosed plots, obviously the amount of food that spider consumed was less. So this, yes, this indicates competition. And D says insects consumed by spiders in unenclosed plots were significantly larger on average than were insects in lizard enclosures and lizard removal enclosures. So I'm looking at the size of the insect, right? Let me just look that. A second is competition. Spiders consume prey larger in relation to their own size. So lizards and spiders might overlap, right? So does this talk about size in a way that makes sense? So if, let's say this is unenclosed plot, so lizards can come here and this is the lizard enclosure and this is no lizard. right? So lizards can come here also and no lizards here. So if there are no lizards here, then insects consumed by spiders should be larger here, right? Because of the size. So D doesn't make sense. It will be A. Okay, according to figure 1, the overall, so let's first understand what figure 1 is saying. So this is the mean number of spiders in 3 lizard effect treatments. Lizards removed. Okay, lizards removed is this one, right? So that's like mean number of spiders for all species. Okay, natural density of lizards is the circle, and unenclosed plots. Okay, so you can see that when the lizards are removed, they show the highest growth. When there is the natural density and when there is the unenclosed plots, it's almost similar, right? Yeah. And these are the dates for which the experiment was conducted, and this is the overall mean. Okay, so what is the question? The overall mean population of spiders in plots where lizards were removed was between. Okay, so overall mean where lizards were removed. So it is this number, which is between 75 and 100. Yeah. So C. The information in figure 1 most strongly suggests that spiders prey on more insects in the fall than in the spring. Spider populations tend to be larger in spring than in summer. The number of lizards in a given plot varies over time. The presence of lizards helps to reduce variability in the number of spiders over time. Okay, so I think I'm going to take a screenshot of this and put it next to the question, the figure, because then I'll be able to kind of look at this properly. Okay, let's now try and look at this. So spiders prey on more insects. Yeah, so option A doesn't make any sense because it's not about insects. Spider populations tend to be larger in spring than in summer. I don't think there's any mention of that with regard to the season, so I don't like B. Number of lizards in a given plot varies over time. We don't know that because the lizards are not plotted on this graph, so C is not right. The presence of lizards helps to reduce variability in the number of spiders. Yeah, that is true because when the lizards are not present, then this shows a lot of variability compared to when they are present, right? So D is the best answer. Okay, so let's mark D. And 52, which of the following statements does the information in figure 2 best support? Okay, so what is the second figure saying? This is the percent composition of analyst lizard diets in adult female M. Daytona spider diets in lizard effect experiments. So, okay, so you see that, for example, if you look at Diptera, which is a prey, then it makes up 18.7% of the spider diet and 10.1% of the analyst diet. So there is some level of overlap in the prey, right? For example, Homoptera makes 5.3 for spider and a whopping 30% for the lizard, right? So yeah, there is some sort of overlap, which is what the passage also says. The removal of Lepidoptera species would have a large impact on analysts. Okay, so let me just do the same thing again. Take a screenshot and put it there. Okay, so this can come here. Okay, the removal of Lepidoptera species would have a large impact on analysts' lizard diets. No, that doesn't make sense because Lepidoptera is just 1.9% of the lizard diet. Hemiptera species are much larger than the species M. detona spiders typically prey on. Hemiptera are much larger than the species. No, we don't know that. The size of the prey is not mentioned. In the experiment, annelus lizards were not dependent on any single food source. Yeah, that is true. They had a variety of food sources to look at. So I like C. The researchers studied a larger sample size of annelus research diets than of M. tetona spider diets. No, both spider and lizard diets are equally distributed in the table. So C is the best answer. So let's choose C. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the passage. Let's grade it, starting from 42. D, B, C, D, B, D, B, C, D, B, triple A, C, D, C. Triple A, C, D, C. Okay, great. So we got all correct. And with this video, we complete the entire solution series for the October 2020 US SAT. I'll link to the entire playlist in the description box, so do check those videos out. Let me know in the comment section what other videos you'd like me to upload. Hit like and subscribe to the channel if this helped. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.